What is going on, Ape Nation? If you've been a long-time subscriber to my channel, then you already know that I love to point out the corruption. So today I'm pointing out more corruption and basically letting you guys know that it's not going unnoticed. Now, we are going to get right into this video, but before we do, I ask that you smash that like button so that the YouTube algorithm shares this video with as many apes as possible. Also, if you're not subscribed yet, I'm not sure what the hell you're waiting for. Go ahead and subscribe, tap that notification bell so that you never miss an upload, because I upload videos just like this every single day. And of course, the purpose of my video today is to point out more corruption. Corruption where someone screws up royally, but nothing really happens to them. They get to step down from their position, or their position simply doesn't get reinstated after their term. So here's another story like this. This has to do, of course, with Elizabeth Warren, and she's questioning at the time Chair Quarles, or Vice Chair Quarles of the Fed. Now, the story here, of course, relates to the Archegos incident, which was a major hedge fund that pretty much imploded, took down a lot of banks with it, and we're talking about, you know, a $10 billion problem here that no one really was held accountable for. So I'm going to play you guys this clip, and then afterwards I'm going to let you know what happened to Vice Chair Quarles.
Last month, a hedge fund called Archegos imploded after making some very risky bets, and some of our biggest banks had loaned Archegos the money to make those bets, even though the hedge fund was managed by a guy who had already been charged with insider trading and banned by regulators from handling clients' money. Now, those banks suffered $10 billion, that's billion, dollars in losses as Archegos collapsed, with more than half the losses hitting one bank in particular, Credit Suisse. So, Vice Chair Quarles, your job at the Fed is to oversee the safety and soundness of our banks. And last year, you made the decision that Credit Suisse and a few other big foreign banks no longer should be required to participate in a Fed program that was designed to oversee the riskiest banks, the Large Institution Supervision Coordinating Committee, or LISC. Is that right?
Yes, although it didn't change the intensity with which.
So you're the one who said we're not going to do that. So at the time, you justified dropping these banks from increased supervision on the ground that these banks, and I have it here, have significantly shrunk their U.S. footprint, and their U.S. operations are much less risky than they used to be, close quote. Your timing, of course, was impeccable on this. Just a few months later, Archegos blew up and resulted in billions of dollars of losses to Credit Suisse. So now, Vice Chair Quarles, before you told the banks like Credit Suisse that they didn't need extra scrutiny from regulators, before that, did you see any warning signs that these banks had some deficiencies in their risk management?
Well, the losses that you're referring to, the great bulk of the Archegos losses occurred outside the United States.
Are you saying that losses outside the United States can't affect operations inside the United States by these large multinationals? Surely not.
But we don't supervise their operations outside the United States. So their operations within the United States have shrunk, exactly as I said.
So you're going to stick with your original play. You know, in 2019, back when Credit Suisse was subjected to the Fed stress test, the Fed, quote, identified weaknesses in the assumptions used by the firm to project stress trading losses that raise concerns about the firm's capital adequacy and capital planning process. In plain English, the Fed said that Credit Suisse's models just weren't realistic. So I want to put the timeline together here. In 2019, Credit Suisse fails a test because it can't accurately project its trading losses. In 2020, you, Mr. Quarles, decide that Credit Suisse should be subject to weaker supervision. And then in 2021, a headline shows up in the Wall Street Journal that reads, quote, Credit Suisse had surprise $20 billion exposure to Archegos investments. So let me ask this, Mr. Quarles, do you now agree that you made the wrong decision to weaken supervision for a bank like Credit Suisse?
Senator, we did not weaken the supervision of a bank like Credit Suisse. The civil servants who are supervising Credit Suisse and our large bank and foreign bank operations
took it out of the program
would take issue with you.
I'm sorry, you can't just say you didn't weaken it. You took it out of a program that was designed to have enhanced supervision, saying you didn't need the enhanced supervision. That's what you said at the time, because their footprint in the United States had shrunk.
I didn't say it was supervision, ma'am. I said it was more appropriate to supervise them with other foreign banks of the same size footprint in the United States, which is what we do. Other foreign banks with similar prime brokerage operations that have long been supervised outside of LISIC because their footprint in the United States is smaller. These banks are now smaller. The losses that you're referring to did not occur in the United States.
I
would not have been able to pick them up in LISIC or otherwise.
Stunned by your argument that you want to say that there was no warning sign from the fact that $10 billion in losses could have affected what Credit Suisse was doing here in the United States. Look, we dodged a bullet with the Archegos collapse this time, but what slipped through the net by regulators to contain these losses when things go wrong was relatively small to what could have slipped through. It could have been an even bigger failure. And that is because instead of protecting the system, you spent your time at the Fed cutting holes in the safety net whenever you could. Your term as chair is up in 5 months, and our financial system will be safer when you are gone.
And in case you were wondering why we're just now discussing this clip, well, it all has to do with what happened to Vice Chair Quarles, and what happened to him was, the Federal Reserve said last Tuesday that Vice Chair for Supervision Randall Quarles would no longer lead the internal committee overseeing bank rules and supervision, as his term as the central bank's top regulatory official expired last Wednesday. But instead, that panel will meet as needed on an unchaired basis, and any regulatory projects will only advance if there is a broad consensus among Fed officials.